Welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update, hosted by the York Group of Downing Fry Realty. Our show will bring you the most up-to-date information on the local real estate market, presented by leading experts in the field.
Hi, and welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update. I'm Michael York of the York Real Estate Group, and today we're joined by our host, Jim York, and his guest, Don Ross Jr., President of Ross Title and Escrow.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Donald Ross, how are you today?
Wonderful, James York. Yourself?
Good. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank
Here,
you.
2020. Let's tell our viewers that haven't seen the show a little bit about yourself.
I'm an attorney in Naples. I've been practicing since 1982. I have a master's in taxation, which comes in handy with non-residents who sell or buy in this area. My family's been in the area since '72. I'm one of the owners at Downing Fry Realty, been their attorney for approximately 25 to 30 years. I own Ross Title and Escrow. We have 7-8 people, group that's been together, some over 30 years, some over 20 years, some over 10 years, very tight-knit group. Do a lot of closings. People seem to be happy. No complaints so far.
And our clients are very happy. You return the phone calls, you do, and
Try.
The closing agent that we use in your company is Dawn White, and she does an excellent job also.
She's one of 4 people who are physically related to each other, so I find working with people from the Midwest, I'm a little biased. They work hard, they're honest, I can trust them, and I like them. So it's just much more effective, I think, when you have a group that you like and they're honest and they work hard.
Yeah, it makes a good environment. So
Thank you.
today, in 2020, usually every year we go back and look at the year previous year. We've done this for, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 years
Sure.
together. And, it's like, what are the biggest mistakes maybe buyers or sellers made last year that you could see that maybe we could avoid or educate them through our show today to help people? That's what we're all about here for. It's
Sure.
educational. So.
Well, you see I have my little cards with my notes on some of the substantive issues, but one just hit me as you were asking the question, and I think you can confirm this for me. People have just seemed to have gotten a little less polite, a little less kind, and that certainly makes any real estate closing a lot more difficult. Kindness goes a long way. Courtesy goes a long way. Not that there aren't situations that might require a bit more sternness,
Right.
but if you start out being difficult, it only goes downhill from there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can always pull out the difficult card if the other side is being unfair about a particular issue, but I think we can all agree that the world is creeping into our profession, and people come into a lot of these transactions, which are normally an emotional transaction for anyone. They don't buy or sell that many homes. Most people don't
No,
their
they
entire
don't, no.
lives. And so they're frightened, plus they're in a different state, and it's done differently here than perhaps New York and Illinois, wherever they're from. But you couple that with just the general anger that seems to be out there, and it's like a fist fight from day one in some cases. We still have our fair share of just genuinely nice human beings, and you do your level best to get to a successful closing. But I would say last year I've really noticed that with pretty much everybody. I don't know if you've seen it, but that's a big issue for sellers, buyers, and realtors.
Well, I think the big point is when we're with buyers or sellers,
Mm-hmm.
it's, we do this show, we do a lot of educational
Right.
seminars, we even do those together, and we write a column for the newspaper. But
Right.
I think it's putting the buyer or the seller at ease
Yes.
more about the process. It's, we're not under pressure, at least our York team isn't. We're going to starve if we don't do a contract today.
Right.
Okay, but so I always tell the client that, think about it, spend the night sleeping about it. I'm not trying to push them into something. And I think that takes a little edge off the buyers and sellers, that anxiety from moving down here. And plus, we have a great team. I'm talking about ourselves here, but we have you that can
Sure. Thank you.
ease people, I tell them to give you a call if they have questions, or we have also a good insurance person, an inspector, a mortgage person. So, and Morgan and Michael that are with me are also experienced. So it's about putting the people at ease and explaining the process, so there isn't that anxiety, going through the process. Now, I can't control another agent or the person that's selling, or
right.
The other end, but we really don't have that much stress with our clients, believe it or not. I mean, they might get anxiety in the beginning, but it's about putting them to ease, and it's, again, educating them.
A lot of people don't do that, and one of your comments I'll amplify on, you don't push people into a transaction. They can sense it when you push them into a transaction. I mean, as I've spoken about on prior shows, I mean, I grew up in this business. My father had his own real estate company and his own construction company since I was born. By osmosis as a child, you pick up things at home, and one of his trademarks was not being afraid to tell a client that this isn't the right property for you.
That's true.
Maybe you shouldn't buy it. And I can think of one person in particular, and it was probably a $2 million purchase. He's a personal friend at this point, because I've done maybe 70-odd closings for this gentleman. But my father, who's not selling anymore, so I'm not trying to promote him, but he actually told him not to purchase a piece of property because it was only 80 foot of seat wall, and it was a $2 or $3 million lot.
Right. And
he's pointed out that the value is in part tied to that. So, oh, okay, and he didn't buy it, and he went on and bought something else. But once the client sees that you're able to and willing to do that you're putting their interests first, they're going to use you more and more, and they're going to refer more people to you. So it's a better business model, I mean, honestly, to do that. But that was just my off the cuff before the substantive things I see sellers fighting over last year. And if you want me to go into that, I can do so.
I think you should go into that. I mean,
well, I mean, the sellers resist on prior surveys, producing the prior surveys, producing their prior title policies, and doing a full and fair disclosure. It hurts them in the long run. The surveys, not looking for the survey, they look at it as though, well, we're just saving the buyer some money, it doesn't do a darn thing for us. Well, they're wrong.
That's right.
If they have a survey that shows no encroachments, there's no encroachments into utility easements or setbacks, that older survey will prevail over a newer survey that might be using a different laser technology, which frequently, if they can't find the original monuments where they measure from on the piece of real estate, might show like a 1 or a 2-inch encroachment into a utility easement or a setback. That lack of diligence in looking for the old survey ends up costing the seller a $1,000 administrative fee with Collier County to get an administrative variance, plus whatever attorney's fees that get piled on top of that. Plus it might scare the buyers, plus it might make the lender a little apprehensive if they're from out of state. So I would say not looking for your prior policy, which I use to see if there are any issues to start with, and then I compare it with my own title insurance commitment to see if my underwriter missed something. Why didn't you pick up this easement that the other underwriter picked up? Why isn't it on your commitment? So I use it just to compare and contrast to see if either one of them made a mistake. Those two help the seller tremendously, but it's not something that is a natural thought process with any seller. The seller's disclosures that we use
it's important.
Is hugely important, and it's another one of those counterintuitive things where and you're the one out there selling. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but it's my impression that they ask, do I have to disclose this, that, or the next thing?
Right.
They're always looking at, and always is an overgeneralization, but there are a lot of sellers looking at what's the minimum that I have to tell? What am I legally required to tell? Instead of, not that that's not important, but you need to know the minimum, but then the next step should be, what would make this deal go most smoothly?
Right.
You know, just because
they
this
think
is
they're
illegal.
hiding something and
They
find
do.
out that, then it's just, you lose the rapport or the confidence in a seller or
Well, I mean,
buyer.
I had a $5 million closing, and there were past termite repairs made. Legally, the seller did not have to disclose that there were past termite repairs made, because it's not, you know, as long as it's not an active infestation,
Right.
you don't have a problem. But the buyer found out that there were past termite repairs made and emailed me saying, hold everything, I may not buy this, it was an as-is contract, he may terminate. They're hiding something. So many buyers think that you're hiding something. Furthermore, if it's something like termites, which, you know, we live in an environment
right.
where there's termites, you know, all over, you know, anywhere in the country.
Right.
If the buyer closes and then gets termites 6 months later, and they find out the owner fixed, you know, a termite infestation a year before, you know,
right.
12-month difference, they're going to try to argue it's part of the same hive, and that the seller is liable for this. And we've had lawsuits over this, and I've used this example in the past, but it was an $80,000 settlement that the parties had to pay just because they didn't want to disclose that there were termites in a shed that was being removed pursuant to the contract anyways. You know,
Right.
the owner is thinking, well, I don't have to tell them because that's being removed anyways. But the owner would have saved themselves a few dollars, a lot of dollars, if they had told them, hey, there's termites in that shed, you know, the shed that we're removing pursuant to the
Right.
contract, and it would have saved them a lot of money. So knowing the legal minimum is good, but then they should talk to Jim, the realtor, the one who sells for a living, and do you think it would be to my benefit to disclose these past repairs, which I'm a huge fan of. You know,
Yeah, I am
roof,
too.
you know,
Right.
leaky pipes,
Yep.
roofs, things that can
Disclose,
reoccur.
disclose.
But it's
Right.
trust, you know,
Right,
in
yeah.
a situation where people are all anxious and wound up, and it just tends to make the whole thing go smoother. So I'm a fan of over-disclosing. Those would be the top three things, I think. Just the surveys, the prior policies, and the seller's disclosure. Not filling it out. Now, the realtor shouldn't be filling this out for the owner.
Right, and we're gonna talk about agents, okay?
Okay, great.
We're gonna take a little short break. We're gonna hear about the York Real Estate Group, and we're gonna hear about Don Rotz's company also. We'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you.
Thinking of buying or selling a home in Naples, Marco Island, Bonita, or Estero, Florida? Think of the most experienced York Real Estate Group, associated with the #1 brokerage in Southwest Florida, Downing Fry Realty, which produces yearly real estate transactions of over $1 billion. Jim, Michael, and Morgan make up the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty, with over $275 million in sales transactions, along with offering over 25 combined years' experience in the local market. The Yorks can offer the experience and trust you need in a realtor. Call them today at 239-273-6727 or visit their website at www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.
Looking for a real estate closing agent in Southwest Florida? Ross Title and Escrow has over 25 years experience and has closed over 20,000 residential real estate transactions. Donald Ross Jr., president of Ross Title and Escrow and a practicing attorney in the state of Florida with a degree in taxation, is here to service your needs. Call Mr. Ross or one of our 4 closing agents for a free consultation today.
Welcome back. Don, we talked about buyers and sellers, what their maybe
Sure,
mistakes
sure.
or we want to avoid. How about real estate agents? What are the biggest mistakes or things they could have done better maybe or not filled out properly that we can help them too and help buyers and sellers understand that?
I asked my manager for help with these questions because all the files funnel through Janet. She's been with me over 30 years. And probably half the files we get, we do not receive telephone numbers and emails for the sellers and buyers. We have to call the realtors, and
Right.
you know, we want to introduce ourselves. We want to make sure there are no problems.
Right.
They don't need wire instructions, things of that sort. So, you know, realtors give us contact information, cell phone numbers, emails. If there are any particular issues that the seller or buyer is concerned about. If the seller is, Canadian and we have a withholding tax issue, let us know.
Right.
I have one where there's a contingency in the contract that a new roof will be finished prior to closing,
Right.
which the realtor drafted.
Right.
And it doesn't say what happens if it's not done by closing, and we have to deal with that. So I always ask, just how do I call them? I want to introduce, we call and we send a letter asking for information, and having that human bond over the phone, and this is my cell phone, if you need me, you can reach me, gets things, maintains that,
Right.
that equilibrium that they have. So that would be a biggie. Not putting permits on the buyer's election form that we use for inspection request, for repair requests. The Naples Board of Realtors has a form when you do your inspections and you find things that are defective that the realtor can use. They're not required to use it, but you can use it, asking the seller to fix these things or give you a credit for these things. A lot of the ones I see, a lot of problems I see are after the request was made and the seller agreed, and then they say the seller didn't do it right, or it's not done on time, or they're disagreeing on what needs to be done. And when I look at it, I find that the request was for something that was cosmetic and they didn't have to agree to it anyways. They might strategically want to agree to certain cosmetic repair requests just to make the deal go smoother, and point out that, hey, I don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it because I'm a nice person and I want to leave it in the condition I found it. And, I'm going to replace the torn screen or whatever the cosmetic issue might be. But I get a lot of fix this, and the inspection report will say, like the air conditioning differential doesn't meet manufacturing specifications. We recommend that you have a qualified HVAC specialist come in and evaluate the air conditioner. So the seller's essentially agreeing to bring in an air conditioning company to do a test to see if this is defective or not. And it could simply be the fan speed. It could be a dirty filter. It could be a leaky coil.
That's right, yeah.
But if it's a 2 or 3 year old air conditioner, it's probably some maintenance issue. So I get broadly based requests for repairs, and then we get the sellers saying, yes, we agree to this broadly based thing. And as an attorney, I just find anything where the communication is clear. We want this shower grouted because there's a hole and water's leaking behind the wall. And the seller responds by saying, we will regrout the shower on that wall. Be clear, not just that we're going to fix some vague general thing.
So that brings a good question up, okay? Is that, we see this about the air conditioner, okay?
Right.
It's not blowing enough cold or hot. There's a, where you can go from 1 degree to another degree. Tolerance.
It's differential they talk about.
So they say bring in an air conditioner. So the seller agrees to bring in an air conditioner guy. Okay, I'm representing the buyer. And they say it's perfect.
Yes.
His calculations was off. So I assume we go by their air conditioner guy.
Well, you have your 10 days to respond to the buyer's request, and that's part of what you're
So we don't have, okay. But
so you're doing a lot of arm wrestling during this 10-day period. That's why, you got your 15 days, the buyer has 15 days to do their inspections, then they have 5 days to ask for repairs or a credit, and then you're representing the seller, you have 10 days to respond. And part of that is bringing in your air conditioning person, and they say, the thing is perfect.
That's where I'm at. What do we do then?
One
says it's not, one says it is.
We usually end up with a third expert just to verify it. FARBAR actually has a procedure for this where they agree to split the cost of a third inspector, and then they agree to go by that person.
And I'm going jumping because of time
I like
restraints
jumping.
here. Okay, is that okay? So the air conditioner guy goes in there and says, really needs a new air conditioner. So again, then we go
He's
back.
trying to sell an air conditioner.
We're negotiating again. We either terminate the contract or they
Well,
Or-
I'd say you look at the bottom of page 6 of the Naples Board of Realtors contract. The cost to repair the air conditioner cannot exceed its fair market value if it's in working condition. So if you have an 8 to 12-year-old air conditioner, that's the useful life of an air conditioner.
But again, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around here.
Bounce away, Jim.
I'm putting you on trial here, okay?
I didn't do it. You didn't
I
see
did an
me.
as-is contract, so what do we do there?
You're playing a game of chicken. Do you think the buyer is going to walk over this?
Okay.
Is it a maintenance issue? Does it need to be serviced? How old is it? Is the buyer trying to renegotiate the price by getting a brand new air conditioner when the existing one is 23 years old? Is that going on? How much is the deposit that the buyer has?
Right.
If it's $2,000 and they're not going to put down their second deposit of $38,000 until they get an answer?
That's what I wanted to
Yeah,
hear,
that's
to tell
blackmail.
the viewers, okay?
Well, it's you know,
it's a little
blackmail's a
process,
strong word, but it's
it's part of negotiation, or
it's-
we want it right. We don't want to find out afterwards that the buyer needs a new air conditioner.
Well, I mean, I had people in today in FSBO where there's no realtor, it's just
Right.
the owners, and they're from different states, and the seller wanted an as-is contract because I'm not going to fix anything.
Right.
Doesn't mean the buyer can't
That's
still
right, doesn't
ask.
mean-
I said,
right.
you know, they still can ask, they still can walk away if they don't. And speaking of air conditioners, I brought a copy out of one contract, and here's the language that one of the realtors wrote. Air handlers should be replaced on unit with 10-year warranty. Now, this is the sort of thing that I see all the time. This is something that should be run by an attorney like
That's
myself.
Right. Exactly.
Air conditioners should. You know, lawyers. I look at the word "should." Well,
Right.
great. I mean,
It
you know,
should be,
we
right.
should. We shouldn't eat candy. We shouldn't
Right.
eat sugar. We shouldn't. You know, we should do what our mother tells us to do.
Right.
And, but this isn't mandatory, and it doesn't say what kind of air handler, if it's a certain capacity, and it doesn't say what happens if it's not replaced. It doesn't say who's paying for it, so it's not flushed out. Just like my other transaction that I have to make a phone call after this show that called for the roof shall be replaced prior to closing. It doesn't say what happens if it's not. I mean, we don't even have tiles for this roof yet,
Right.
and the closing was supposed to be today. So language like this to an attorney is not precise. They don't go to the next step. What happens if it doesn't happen? What happens to the seller? What happens to the buyer? What happens to the deposit? You know, email the language to me or whoever you're working with and make sure it's done correctly and that you're protected under the contract.
That's why you're part of our team.
I try.
So,
Really, thank
because
you.
we rely on you, and our customers rely
Well,
on
thank
you. I
you.
give them your cell phone number, and you know, we're not attorneys. We can do so much. I mean, some of the stuff we do, it's kind of easy, but something technical like that, it's got to be put by you.
Well, a lot of it's easy, but it's funny. The things that look easy are never easy.
Right.
I mean, I get a lot of requests for people who used us, they've done their closing, and then they want us to quick claim it into some other entity.
Right.
And I got to look and see, is there a mortgage against the property? Is it an association? Do we have to get the permission of the association? Is it
Right.
going to have any tax issues? Is it going to do something to the buyer's title insurance policy? You know, so there's a whole raft of
Right.
things you have to go through, and in many cases you have to get permission of the lender to do this because it will trigger the mortgage
That's
if you
right.
transfer it. And then you might have doc stamps on the amount of the mortgage. You know,
Right.
$7 per thousand on the transfer from Joe Smith to Joe Smith Trust.
Right.
So, you know, anything that's easy, I get suspicious.
Okay.
There's always something.
Well, Donald, it was nice
James?
seeing you this month, and we'll see you next month. And thank you for helping our viewers.
You're entirely
hopefully they
welcome.
understood what we talked about, and we'll see you next week. Thank you
you.
very much.